Have you ever wondered about what might happen if you pursued that side hustle or that dream job you've always thought about? I'm Nat, this is Feedbag, and my guest today knows all about that. His side hustle led to him becoming the go-to guy for entertainment literally across the country. Movies, TV, you name it. His name is Chris Bumbray. He's the editor-in-chief at JoBlo.com. And today we're going to talk about how he started that side hustle and some of his most memorable moments with celebrities, including a close encounter recently with the late Rob Reiner. If you need some inspiration to get that side hustle going, this is the episode for you, my friend. Come on in.
We've known each other like 14 years.
Longer, actually, because you always forget the first time that we met, and it was a long time ago.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, you think it was when at the beat.
It wasn't?
It wasn't at the beat. You don't remember. It was. So I did a week-long internship at CJD when you worked for Bell in like 2003. So long time ago, 22 years ago. And I only saw you one time. And it was as I was leaving, and I was like, hey, Nat Loza. And you're like, hey, how are you? And we ended up walking for a while. And then you walked me to the metro.
I did?
I remember I walked, we were just chatting, and you were like, "Hey, where are you going?" I'm like, "I'm just going to the metro." "Oh, I'll walk you there." And we ended up walking, and we just chatted, and I was like, "Oh, wow, she's super, super nice." And then I saw you again, years later when we worked together at the Beat. Yeah.
Oh my God, thank you for telling.
I was like starstruck. I was like, "Whoa, it's the Nat Loza," and like I was pretty impressed.
No, please.
Yeah.
You had a low barometer.
Yeah. It's like, whoa.
See, it pays to be nice to people. It really does, because it'll come back around like 22 years later. Yeah, you're in my basement.
Crazy.
Who would have thought?
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. Time flies, too. Yeah. It was like I remember that week. That was a crazy week, too. And the newsroom was so full of people. And if you go to like a radio newsroom now, it's not at all the same.
Oh, 20 plus years ago in radio was such a different beast. And media, too.
Well, TV,
in general.
Like,
Yeah. And we are going to touch on that because you are now, your career really took off. So it
went in different directions.
I think your story is especially important for people in midlife, because I feel like our generation, 40s and 50s, are making career pivots right now.
Yeah, they are, big time.
Whether that's, like you just, like we just alluded to, your job becoming obsolete, or whether you are going back to school, or life circumstances, or whatever it is, or maybe it's just finally you were like, I want to follow this dream. I want to pursue this thing I've always wanted to do. Can you talk a little bit about, number one, why you wanted to be a movie critic?
Yeah.
And how you took the steps to get there, because I know it wasn't linear.
No, it's weird. The whole movie critic thing, I don't even know that was necessarily what I wanted to be, but I just loved movies. I loved movies, and I wrote movie reviews for like my school newspaper. And I did, there was an early thing called Rec Arts Reviews, where you submit reviews and stuff on the internet. And I remember I did one for Lethal Weapon 4 and like The Mask of Zorro, like 98, when I was like 16, right? And then I didn't really think about it much, but I wrote movie reviews for the Concordian and for the Link when I was in journalism school at Concordia. But I never really thought about being like a professional film critic. It was only because I worked in university, I worked for Paramount Pictures, a major film studio, as the Montreal marketing rep, because they used to hire people that worked at universities.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, to basically promote their movies, like grassroots marketing. So you'd get like a movie and you'd end up showing it like a bunch of times. You take notes, screening reactions, and it was like old school, like grassroots marketing, which they don't really do anymore. So I'd have to show the same movie like 7 or 8 times. And I'd have to fax in news stories like fax in. I had to buy a fax machine. I remember it was the summer I did 2 Tom Cruise movies in a row, and it was the summer that he went like the couch jumping thing.
Yeah, the Katie Holmes on Oprah.
Yeah. And I had to send in I had to fax in reports every day whenever something showed up in the Gazette about it.
About the Tom Watch.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And I was on Tom Watch, but I got into seeing free movies that way, and I loved it. I loved seeing stuff early, and I just wanted to keep doing it. I had a regular job at the time too, and then somebody was like, a guy who runs a website, I didn't work for them, but it was a website called Ion Cinema in town, Eric Lavalley, who actually recently got into the Golden Globes Association. He shared a web designer with Joe Blow, which is the site that I work for now. And he was like, he's from Montreal, the guy Berge, who runs the site, who owns the site, the CEO. And he said, you should send him an email one day. So I sent him an email. I didn't hear back for months and months and months. And then he wrote me back and he's like, hey, my health has been a little bit iffy and I can't really go to screenings like I used to in Montreal. And I was invited to a screening for like The Martian Child, a movie nobody remembers now. This John Cusack movie. where he adopts a kid who thinks he's a Martian. I remember it was pretty bad. And he's like, do you want to give it a shot? And I was like, okay, sure. So I went and I watched the movie. I sent him like a 600-700 word review, and he liked it. And then he would send me to like occasional screenings, and it would just be I would was on the rotation, and he'd be like, hey, can you make it if you go this week? Can you make it if you go? And I was like, okay. So I went, and that was in 2008, and I'm still there.
Okay, so people can look up Joe Blo. So it's JOBLO.com.
I'm right on there every day.
And on YouTube, it's Joe Blo also.
The Joe Blo Movie Network, but we have many, many different channels. I was his main film critic for years and years and years until the pandemic.
Yeah.
And he, he was great to me. He would send me to Toronto, to TIFF, to Sundance. What I had a great gig at the Beat. I'd started out as an op, and I had done traffic and weather reporting overnights, but eventually I ended up being a copywriter, a part-time copywriter, writing commercials for about 20 or so hours a week. And it was enough to have like a base salary, and it was relatively flexible. So I could go on these trips for him and stuff like that. And it would be, and I had other gigs that I was doing at the same time. So it would all kind of add up to a regular full-time salary. But then the pandemic hit, and the radio station just didn't have ads coming in. So they laid me off. And I went on the Celeb very briefly. And then I wrote him a message, and I said, hey, if you have like extra work, I'm around.
What was kind of crappy turned out to be an amazing thing for you.
And it just ended up working out. But then, eventually transitioned to just doing the website. And I'm the editor-in-chief of the website. So it's more like a movie journalist than, and it's kind of coordinating the editorial coverage of the site, but a lot of technical stuff too, SEO, AEO, artificial intelligence, engine optimization, so it's a lot of technical stuff. And I have to say, like, I'm very, very grateful to Burge, the guy who runs Joe Blo, because, he gave me an opportunity to kind of really go outside of my comfort zone, do all this SEO and AEO stuff, which was nothing that I had ever really even thought about doing before. But it gave me other skills that I could use and that I could parlay into other things.
Absolutely.
And, he paid for me to go to school to take classes in them.
Wow.
Yeah. And he was, so he's always been really good that way. And I still have, like, we're going to talk about side hustles, which I think you have to have at this age. But it was a pivot that happened for me when I was about 39 years old,
Yeah. I don't think it's like how our parents' generation, where you got a job and you stayed there until you received the gold watch.
Yeah, your pension. Yeah, and they both have their pensions, but we don't really get that anymore. I think our generation is a generation that does that and has gotten more comfortable with doing that. Like I feel at some point in my life I may have to do another pivot, and I think that, I look at my parents, and they had these jobs. They were, a cop and a nurse, and they had these jobs their whole lives, and they were great jobs and they had great careers. But I feel like that's rare these days.
Now it's like, you're doing this and you're doing that and you're doing that. Why do you think so many people have side hustles now?
Well, I mean, I think the economy is part of it. I think that kind of security just doesn't really exist anymore. Jobs are being taken away by, AI. That's happened to friends of mine that work in the coding business or the VFX industry. It's happening a lot,
It happened in radio. It's happening in radio. Yeah.
Radio. You saw like how it shrank and shrank and shrank over the years, and TV as well. A lot of people that had long careers suddenly had no jobs, and where are you going to go? And I think what I kind of realized when I was younger was that, if I lost a job, I wanted to have other skills that I could fall back on, so that's why I really got into teaching, and for a while I was going to become a teacher. And I was actually on the path to doing a second degree in teaching, but then the radio job came through, the copywriting job, and it kind of really worked for me at the time. But I wanted to keep a foot in teaching, so for the last 10 years, I've taught ESL on the side, and it's not even for the money, because ironically, that's the thing that pays the less on this job,
right? Which
is always kind of the case, right? But it keeps you grounded. It keeps those skills sharp. And at some point in my life, I may go back to doing it full time. I might, I could theoretically become a teacher.
Right.
I got enough experience, and there's enough of a need for it. But then who knows where it's going to lead.
I did the same thing, because I knew that radio was a very volatile industry.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen so many layoffs.
Yeah, right? And I have to say, I've been super lucky. Yeah. Like, radio has been really good to me. I've had a career in it and still do for the last 35 years. But I think about 15 years ago or so, I said, I don't want to put all my eggs in this basket.
And that's smart.
Yeah. So I started my own voiceover company, which also is seeing a reduction because of AI and automation. But I just always wanted to have a few streams because I wanted to be in control of my own stuff, you know? So it never hurts if you have an interest to try and build on that in your spare time. So when was the point as a movie journalist when you went, oh my God, like I'm legit, like this is real now. This is a thing that I started doing as a side hustle, but now I'm legit.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. There have been a couple moments like that. I think one of them definitely was going to TIFF and to Sundance for the first time, you know, and being around like celebrities and just like how that was, you know, and interviewing people and doing press junkets. I remember I was at a party in 2010. It was like my second year of covering TIFF, and it was the premiere of The Town, the Ben Affleck movie.
Yeah. Okay.
And I was going to a private screening of it at a hotel in like a private screening room, which I'd never been to one of those before. And I got there early and they were like, oh, just go have a drink at the bar. So I went to the bar and it was like Ben Affleck was there with like Jennifer Gardner, and it was like the party for the movie. I didn't even notice. And then I was standing by the elevator and like Clive Owen standing next to me talking to his wife on his phone. And I didn't bother anybody, but I was just like, whoa, what is going on?
Yeah, like planet.
How did I get here? Yeah,
what is happening?
This is very strange. You know?
Yeah.
I was kind of trying to keep it low key. Like I didn't want to bother anybody.
But inside you're like,
yeah. How did I get here? So there was that. And then also Rotten Tomatoes, you know, being on Rotten Tomatoes is a big thing.
Tell us what Rotten Tomatoes is.
Rotten Tomatoes is basically all the critics submit their reviews. And if they're positive, it's fresh. And if they're negative, it's rotten. And then it gets tallied and it's become this kind of defining thing in our industry where if you get a fresh rating, your movie is considered good. And if you get a rotten rating, it's considered bad. It has really kind of hurt film criticism in a lot of ways, though, because there's no nuance. I rarely see a movie that's all good or all bad.
Right. Okay.
But being on it is very important for your career because you get read a lot more and it brings in a lot more traffic. And
I always look on Rotten Tomatoes, like if they're, because with me, I don't want to waste time on a movie.
I mean, you know, the thing is, a lot of times though, there are movies that are rotten on Rotten Tomatoes that I really like. You know, I think that that's the thing, the beauty of seeing a film. It's subjective. You know, where I can love it, you can hate it. And we're both right. You know, nobody's wrong. But, you know, so with Rotten Tomatoes, it takes you have to jump through a lot of hoops to get on there, and they're quite selective, right? But to my amazement, when I applied for it, it turned out I already had an account. And the reason was because when I was a teenager, those reviews that I wrote for the Rec Arts news group, those were used to populate Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh.
So I already had a profile, a critic's profile in it. So I was like backdoored in.
Great.
That I had no idea about for years. And they were like, no, you're already here. So it was like, oh, great. Okay. And then so there was that. And then getting into the CCAs was a huge thing.
What is that?
Critics' Choice Association. It used to be the Broadcast Film Critics Association, but now it's kind of pivoted because there's a lot of web. But it's the big kind of the premier group for critics in North America in particular. And getting into that was huge.
Was there someone that you emulated? It's not a straight line. So like, were you like, this is what I want to do, so who can I look at to kind of...
I never thought of it that way. Like when I was young, my father would buy me like Leonard Maltin's movie guide, and I'd had it by my bed, and I would almost to the point that I memorized that we would play this game at parties where he'd name a movie and I would name the year it came out, and I've always been able to do that, right?
I wish I had it with me right now.
Yeah, and it would be like he would be testing me and stuff because
you're a movie Rain Man.
Yeah, because I was great at that. You know, that was but it was funny. I never emulated anybody's career because I honestly never thought that I'd be doing it as a profession. Never in a million years.
I think that is a key point because I feel like if you're doing a thing on the side because you maybe love that thing.
Yes, it was a hobby. It was a hobby.
Yes, it's a hobby. And so you just do it for the love of doing it. And you're not attached to the outcome. So the less you think about what's down the road and the more you think about how much you're enjoying it in the moment, it's just going to happen.
If I didn't work for Joe Blow, I'd still be doing it. I'd be doing it somehow. I don't know if I'd be making any money doing it, but I would be doing it in some capacity for sure.
Did you love movies as a kid then?
Oh yeah. Parents, they always encouraged my love of movies too, and my father likes movies, and they still watch, screeners I have my award screeners, and then
they send it's companies that send you their movies,
DVDs and stuff, and now it's all digital, but I hook them up with it, and they watch everything. They watched Marty Supreme the other night. They watched one battle after another, and they're older, but they're pretty, their tastes are quite edgy. Funny enough.
What is the first movie that you remember watching?
Oh, hard to say. I remember seeing E.T. in theaters and being terrified, but it must have been a re-release because I'm not that old. So it was I think in '87.
Oh, I'm that old. E.T. was my first movie.
Yeah. Oh, and I had a panic attack when he showed up for the first time, and I had to leave the theater. But then I was crying at the end when he was dying. And my mom always tells a story. She took me to see, probably about the same year, she took me to see this movie called Benji the Hunted. You know Benji?
Yes. Yeah. Well, we had a dog that looked like Benji.
Yeah. So I love dogs. I grew up with a dog. And she took me to Benji the Hunted. And she didn't realize that Benji the Hunted was the edgy Benji movie. Okay. Where he gets lost in the wilderness.
Edgy Benji?
Yeah. And he gets lost in the wilderness. And then he's they call Benji the Hunted because he's being hunted, right? By mountain lions. And he comes across these baby mountain lions that their mother died or something. So he's taking care of them, but then they're being stalked by a wolf or something. Some kind of some kind of really dangerous animal is stalking them. And I was hysterical the whole movie because I was they're going to hurt Benji, and I was really worried about him. And then at the end of the movie, he kills the main, and he's not talking. He's just Benji.
Yeah.
Right? And he's just at one point, the mountain lion jumps at him, and he jumps out of the way, and it falls off the mountain. You just see it go, and then he just there's a close up, and he goes woof, and it's a one liner. And I remember as a kid, I loved it, and it was and it was.
But P.S. spoiler for Benji the Hunted.
It's on Disney Plus. But my mom was there was a part in the movie where a vulture comes and takes one of the mountain lions away and flies away with it. She said I was just hysterical as a kid. I was so upset.
Wow. Benji the Hunted, a defining movie for Chris Bumbray. Who
very
knew?
Upset. It was hard. It was a hard movie for a kid. But then I remember also seeing Roger Rabbit in theaters, loving it. Crocodile Dundee, loved that too. So, but my parents were cool. They were they're gonna be mad at me saying this, but they were very laid back and they kind of would let me choose what I wanted to watch as long as it wasn't too extreme.
Right. Well, that's okay.
Yeah, because I was pretty well behaved as a child, and I had a good head on my shoulders. I knew things weren't real.
He wasn't watching Bleu Nuit.
I did watch Bleu Nuit, but it was, but they didn't know about it. But
it was scrambled. It was scrambled.
No, it was free. It was on TQS. Every kid my age watched Bleu Nuit, 100%. Yeah, we all did. It was more a softcore erotica.
When I grew up in Ontario, and I only ever saw it scrambled, and it was every now and then you would see something that looked like something.
I mean, I think my father would have just been happy I was watching something in French, So I was so I was getting some language lessons in,
Yeah, learning a lot of oohs and ahs. Le ooh, le ah. So I want to get to the fun stuff of your job because you go to all these movie festivals and you interview celebrities.
It happens at certain times of year. It happens when I cover a festival like TIFF or Sundance because we have people in LA and all over, that are doing interviews and that are great at them. But I go to the festival so I get access, to do stuff in person. But during the year, I typically will offload that to different people unless an interview comes up that I really have to do. Stallone came up once, and I was like, "Well, I'm doing this. I don't care. I'm the boss, so I'm doing this one." And it was I had to give Schwarzenegger to somebody this year because I had a conflict. So
wow,
I was like, "Oh, I'll give it to the guy Tyler who works for me." I was like, "Well, I've
got a dental appointment. I can't interview Arnold Schwarzenegger."
Oh, it was terrible. Well, that kind of stuff happens though.
Yeah.
Right?
But it's good that there's a team.
Yeah, great team. And they and who are very plugged in. And they're all over the place. But when I go to the film festivals, I get to do a lot of those interviews, and those are crazy. But they're always in a certain chunk of days where it's just this surreal week will go by, and you're like, what
happened? What is my life right now?
Yeah, this is a crazy week.
One of my favorite stories because I love Bryan Cranston.
Oh, so do I. Yeah, and
I loved him even more after this story. Can you tell it?
Okay, so I'm a huge Breaking Bad fan, and I have good stories about a couple of people from that show because it was a really nice team of people. It seemed. So anyway, I was going to interview Bryan Cranston for a movie he was in called Trumbo a few years ago, where he played Dalton Trumbo, the famous screenwriter who was blacklisted. Anyway, one of my good friends was on the junket with me. Her name is Perry Nemiroff, and she's a pretty famous journalist in the U.S., and she's probably watching this now, and she's probably like, pretty famous. Eh? Well, I am pretty famous. And so she, Fandango, Collider, all these big outlets. Anyway, I was very nervous to do this interview, and I don't always get nervous when I do them, but I was kind of nervous, and she's like, well, what the hell's the matter with you? And I was like, well, it's Bryan Cranston, I mean, I love Breaking Bad, but God, what if he was an asshole? Like, what would I do? Like, I don't know if I'd be able to keep watching the show. I've had a couple of encounters like that and then it makes it difficult for you to go back and watch their work.
Yeah.
But 99.9% of the time, it's been very positive. And she goes, oh, I'm sure he'll be fine. So she goes in, she does the interview, and she comes out, and she's like, ugh. Well, good luck. And I'm like, really? And she's like, good luck. He's an asshole. And I'm like, okay. So I go in, and he's taking off his mic, and like, Bryan, you got one more interview. He goes, now I'm done. And then I was like kind of disappointed. And he starts to laugh. And he goes, no. He goes, I'm sorry. Your friend Perry was just in here, and we had a great interview, and she was like telling me that you were nervous. And she's like, well, we got to fuck with him, right? Sorry if I'm swearing too much here, but
okay.
She's like, we got to fuck with him. And then because he turns out he's a very nice guy. So this was a whole thing that they had worked up between the two of them. And he's like, no, I'd be happy to do an interview. And he's actually a very nice guy. Right?
He was in on the joke.
Yeah.
I love that he was just, I'm going to go
funny.
along with it.
It was very funny. And he was, he played it to the hilt, right? He's kind of a ham, if you watch like Malcolm in the
Middle.
Right,
yeah.
So he was great. And
what a relief for you to know that you must have been pooping your pants when he was like, I'm done, no more interviews.
He had like a twinkle in his eyes. So I could kind of tell like he was reticent like a little bit, because I think he didn't want to like hurt my feelings or something like that. Like it was funny. But then the other one who I had a great experience with was Odenkirk, Bob Odenkirk. Who plays
another
Saul.
Person who I love. Did you see him at Just for Laughs a few years ago? They did a living wake for Bob Odenkirk. A living wake.
Well, I knew him for like, Mr. Show and stuff, but I really became a big fan of his when he did Breaking Bad, but in particular in the last couple of years when he's become like an action star. Yeah. Which is such a weird transition.
Mr. Nobody.
Yeah, Nobody. Yeah, and I really loved that movie when it came out. And, he always said, because he had a heart attack afterwards on Better Call Saul. And he always said that doing that movie saved his life because it got him into great shape, So I ended up getting it because I really, really, really liked the first movie. And I guess my review of it made the rounds and stuff like that. So I was invited to LA to do the junket for it last summer for the sequel. And he knew me. He was like, hey, Joe Blow.
A humongous celebrity knew you.
Well, he knew the site. He knew that we'd been very... Stallone does, too. Stallone, every time I see Stallone, he's, hey, Joe Blow, how you doing? And it's like... they do remember sometimes.
Does this blow your mind?
Oh, yeah. It's crazy. And it's like, hey, Joe Blow, how you doing? And it's like, it's nice. But like, and Odenkirk was like, hey, Joe Blow, I love you, man. And then, so I did the interview. And then TIFF came around, and he had another action movie at TIFF, this movie called Normal, which comes out next year. And I was invited to a party. And I went up to him. I was like, hey, Bob. And he's like, Joe Blow, hey. And he's like, hey. And I was like, and I told him, I was like, you said a story. You had given an interview where you were talking about how getting in shape saved your life, and and how you turned things around at an older age and got really fit. And I was like, that was kind of influential on me because I started working out after I read that. He was like really happy and he was giving me like workout tips and stuff like that. And
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, I struggle with chin ups, and he's like, well, it's really in your back, not in your arms. And he was like trying to show me the muscles to use. He was a very cool guy, very nice guy. So most of them are like that. Most of them are very nice. Stallone too, very nice. I don't always agree with his politics, but from what I've experienced, extremely nice person.
That's cool. It's really reassuring to know that most of the people that we love to watch in movies are actually cool people in real life.
I mean, even controversial ones, like, they don't come much more controversial than like Mel Gibson, but even he was super nice to me when I interviewed him. For the most part, they are. If you come to them with a genuine appreciation for their work and you're not just trying to push buttons and get like kind of a gotcha clip, then they'll always be very nice.
What I always love about your interview style is you try to surprise them with a little known something.
You get great stuff out of them. Like I did an interview, another great one with Anne Hathaway once, who I love, and I mentioned to her, I was like, I read that you always wanted to do something that was, because it was for that WeWork special that she, like, miniseries that she did, and I was like, I heard that you like these kind of like stories that go crazy, like because you knew the woman from the WeWork thing, and she was like, yeah, well, she goes, I love how when things go disastrously awry, and she's like, did you see the Fire Festival doc? And I was like, yeah, of course I did. And then we ended up talking about that for like a couple of minutes, and she was hilarious, and she was like, I think it's crazy, and did you see he was going to do this and that? And she just
opened up. She just got yeah.
Well, you see the genuine person there too,
yes.
like what this person must be like to hang out with normally, and it was like, oh, she's really cool. Like the same thing. Chastain is like that too, where for some reason when I went to interview Jessica Chastain, I was very nervous. I thought she'd be like Meryl Streep or something like that, like very serious, but she was like cracking fart jokes and stuff like that, and she was just very chill. But then you also see, oh, that's why Chastain and Hathaway, and a lot of these other people are in so much. Yeah. Because they're easy to work
to interview and
they're easy to work with,
yeah.
and they're not a hassle on set. Like they're not, Cranston the same way, Odenkirk, these people always work because they're nice. They're not prima donnas, right? So it's like, oh, this person is an easy person to work with, and they'll also do great work.
Okay, so 1 minute you are hanging out with Bob Odenkirk, talking about chin-ups, and one flight later, you are back home in Montreal, tutoring English as a second language.
Yeah. I've always done it. Like and I love it. It's a side hustle, but it's something I've always enjoyed. My students all know what I do, and they all kind of follow me on social media, and they love it. And they get a big kick out of it for the most part.
What?
So they're flexible. When I need to cancel, I'm like, I have to go to LA, and I'm like, no problem.
Okay, give us stories.
I'm like, well, guys, I got to go to LA. I got another junket, or I got another thing, and they're always very flexible. Like, oh, have a great time.
How long have you been tutoring?
Over 10 years.
And it was because
I needed the money. I wasn't full time with Joe Blow. I was just doing film critic stuff on the side for him, and I was kind of feeling the pinch. I had rent to pay, and then I saw a job opening for like an ESL tutor, and I had some experience because I'd done a year of an ESL degree that I never finished, and I really enjoyed it. It keeps me kind of grounded, but then it could be surreal at times too. I was teaching this one guy, Miguel, who's a newer student of mine. He's a young guy. He's like 28, but he's already got like a family, like 2 kids and stuff. So he's much more of an adult than I am. It was my first class with him ever. And I had missed a couple before leading up to it. And I don't like to miss too many classes because I don't want them to think that they're not important. So I was like, I got to do this class. So I was at the Beverly Hills Hotel waiting to do the junket for Jay Kelly, interview Clooney. And I went into the...
I love how that's just a side note. I was waiting to interview George Clooney. Anyways,
it was one of those days. It was one of those days. And I was like...
One of those surreal moments.
I have an hour, though, to do this class. So I went into a little cafe at the Beverly Hills Hotel, and I was talking on the headset, because I do most of them online. And where I was like, I can be kind of animated when I'm talking. And there were these 2 rich ladies that were sitting next to me, and they were awful. And they were like, oh, you're too loud and whatever. And they were a pain, so I had to move. I go sit next down to this older guy. I don't pay attention to who it is. And I'm doing my class. Older guy doesn't say anything, but I can tell he's like looking over and he's curious like to what I'm doing. He's just kind of like looking at the screen like that. But I didn't even really notice who it was. I do my class ends. I get up and I see who the person next to me is. And it's Rob Reiner.
Yeah. Wow.
And I didn't say anything to him because I was like, oh, he probably gets approached all the time. I didn't say anything. So I was just like,
wow.
Rob Reiner, cool. Like, he was cool. He wasn't like an ass. He wasn't like,
no, you were there for an hour
and
teaching
he seemed kind of
class.
interested. Like, he was like kind of looking over to what I was doing. Like, hey, what's this guy doing? Because he heard me speaking French, because I do have to speak quite a bit of French. And he was like, oh, well, this is unusual in LA. I didn't say anything to him. I just left, and, and that was that. And
well, respect for that, because I'm sure that celebrities, when they're sitting in a restaurant or a cafe, don't want to be approached.
Yeah,
all
it was
the time,
his private time. He wasn't there working, So I was
Isn't
like, I'm not going to say
amazing?
anything. And then, he gets murdered a couple weeks later. And then the crazy thing about that, the student I'm still teaching, and I sit down with Miguel, and I'm like, hey, have you been keeping up with the news? Did you see the story about like Rob Reiner, the director who was murdered? And he goes, yeah, that's crazy. He goes, do you know that when I was teaching you for the first class, he was sitting next to me that whole class? And you remember that class well, and he was like, that is really, really weird, and it's that's how it goes sometimes too. It sends a chill up your spine.
Yeah, it's a real 6 degrees situation.
Yeah, it sure is. But you can't ever predict it, right?
Of course not.
No,
you're like, I'll get to interview this guy at some point,
oh, yeah,
maybe down the line,
yeah, exactly. And you never really get that chance again.
Yeah. What has being a teacher taught you over the last 10 years?
I think it's helped my interviewing a lot, because you have to talk and you have to listen to people. you're almost a therapist sometimes when you're a teacher, because you do, especially when they're all adult students, and you develop a close relationship with them. So listening is a very important part of my job, but also being able to keep the energy going if the energy lags. So I feel like, if anything, it's made me better at my job.
It's this one job has made you better in your other job. And that's what we were saying earlier about when you have a side hustle, it gives you skills that are transferable.
Oh yeah, and another thing that was important too is it's really changed the way I speak, which is another important thing, because when you're teaching people who don't have the strongest command of the language, it's a hard time it's hard for them to understand if you're not enunciating clearly,
right?
And if you're too slangy. And I think before I taught, I was more of a mumbler, and I wouldn't speak clearly, but I ended up speaking very clearly to my students so that they would understand, and that just became the way I spoke, right, in my normal life. So I think it helped. I think that's why, in recent years I've gotten to do more TV and radio stuff, because I really worked on my diction.
Yeah.
Because I had to for my job.
Yeah. It made you better.
It did.
So what would you say to the person who wants to do a side hustle? What could be the first step?
Well, I think just figure out what you do for fun and see if you can monetize it. I think in a lot of cases you'd be surprised at how much you actually can. So
yeah.
that's an interesting thing. But also don't focus on the money too much. Like, if you have a job that pays the bills, just do it for pleasure. I think if people are focusing too much on money, that kind of takes the fun away from it sometimes.
It does. If all your eggs are in that basket and you're like, I have to make this work, this has to work, it doesn't necessarily have to work, because by failing, you're going to develop skills that can help you in other parts of your life anyway, that may help get you to the thing that you eventually want to do. Failure, I think, builds resilience.
Oh, it sure does. And I think you learn a lot more from failing than you do from your successes a lot of the time. I mean, I've had interviews that have been disasters, but then I've realized that, I really screwed this one up. How am I going to learn from this next time?
Yeah, we hate seeing ourselves fail, but we only get better from failure.
Sure.
So please, please, please don't be worried about failing. Just do the thing, and it doesn't have to be perfect, and it doesn't have to be the way that you eventually imagine it. Just start.
Mm-hmm. Somebody starts somewhere. Yeah.
So here's a little something that some of you may not know about Chris, is that here in Montreal, Chris's dad is a bit of a hometown celebrity, you might say. Constable William Bumbray is his name, which is familiar to many Montrealers.
From a certain age group, I think.
Yeah, so what age would you say?
I would say 42 to mid-50s.
Tell me what your dad did.
Well, he was a police officer, but there was a program that was called Infocrime that was broadcast on the news on Pulse back in the day, Bill Hoagland and Mitsumi Takahashi, and also on the French channels. And he basically worked in media relations at a certain point. And it was like the Crime Stoppers of Montreal, where they would show whomever committed a crime this week. And then my father had this little spiel when he would come on, and he'd be like, if you've seen so-and-so, call this number. Only you can stop crime, or something weird like that. And he would do it in English and in French, because he had good diction in both languages. He's a francophone, but he speaks English like an anglophone, right? So he was able to do that. He recorded 50 of them, and they would just kind of tack them on to these specials, and they put them on for a long time, long after he retired in 97. They were still airing.
Did your dad actually get recognized for the info crime?
All the time. Oh my gosh. Yeah. When we would go to the mall, people would come up to him, and I remember every time I had a new teacher, it would be like, Bumbray, was your dad that guy on TV? And I was like, yes, he is. And people recognize.
Did he love it? How do you feel about it?
He hated it.
He hated it.
At the time, he hated it. At the time, he hated it because, he
didn't want to be recognized.
He was just a cop, right? And it wasn't like he was being paid extra money. He was told to do it, but I think over the years now, he's kind of come to appreciate it. And I think that now he gets a kick out of it.
Yeah, because it's there's a certain novelty to it. I mean, your dad was on TV for many years and sort of became entrenched in the lives of Montrealers without even realizing it.
Yeah, he had no idea. And that was just, particularly in the French population too. And they used to make fun of him on the TV shows. And
they did?
Oh yeah. And Ça fait, tout le monde en parle. And Ça fait Rire magazine would make fun of him all the time. And and he liked that. He enjoyed that.
Yeah.
But it was just
he wanted to be made fun of, but not the actual stuff.
He had a good sense of humor, but like when people would come up to him at the mall and ask for his autograph, like which would occasionally happen, he would just kind of roll his eyes. He would just kind of like, shuffle off. But he would like talk to kids. He'd go to schools and he'd say like, don't say no to drugs, like that kind of thing. That was part of his job as well. And then it enabled him to go work on like the youth squad and in youth protection, and that was something that
that's
really
cool.
enjoyed. Yeah.
How did you feel about your dad being on TV? How did it affect you? Did it?
I hated it. Like
you did,
and so did my sister. We both hated it when we were growing
up. The attention.
It
was embarrassing.
Oh yeah, it was hugely embarrassing, and then it we didn't like it at all. But now I look back on it and I can see that it was a great thing. And I'm very proud of it now. And I think she is as well. It's one of those things that when you're younger, you don't really understand, and especially for somebody who works in the media, myself, and I kind of get it now. And I don't think I necessarily got it back then. And now I appreciate it. Now I always get a kick out of it. I was in a bar and some barflies recognized my last name the other day and they were like, hey, your dad used to be on TV. And I got a kick out of it. And I think it's fun. And I mean, and it's been good in some ways professionally for like Montreal media too, because people recognize that last name and okay, well, it gives you, I'm not saying I'm a Nepo baby or anything like that, but it gives you sometimes, a foot in the door. And I think so I think it's been advantageous in some ways. And a lot of people that my dad knew that are, known in the media, and they all have very good memories of him and they all really liked him. He's a very affable, likable guy, so that definitely helped a lot, I think.
Shout out to your dad.
Yeah.
Hi, William Bumbray.
He's watching for sure.
Chris, I want to thank you so much for your time. We didn't even barely get into like actual movie stuff. So I think we need a part 2 to this episode where we talk about that. Would that be okay?
Oh, of course. Yeah, of course.
I really appreciate you coming on and talking about your side hustle, which turned into this amazing thing and full-time job. And I hope that people watching or listening can take some inspiration from that to just follow what you love and see what happens. Like, just see.
You never know where it'll take you.
My thanks to Chris Bumbray, editor-in-chief at JoBlo.com. That was such a fun conversation, and we didn't have time for all of it. So I hope you can join us for part 2, where we're going to get a little bit nostalgic about our old favorites and what we can expect on the small screen and the big screen for this coming year, 2026. And if you enjoyed this one, please consider liking or subscribing because it really helps so much. Thanks for hanging out today on Feedbag.